So I was gonna make this video and planning, it's kind of funny, but unfortunately I got interrupted in my mind when I looked at Facebook and I saw another article saying, "Oh look, the men's rights movement is so proud that they think they can make Star Wars lose money because there's a woman in it." And the reason that irritates me is because their men's rights activists are the website Return of Kings, the semi-popular website that is run by Roosh V. He's not a fucking men's rights activist. He's not part of the men's rights movement. He has already explained this several times openly because he always gets called one by the media who is just like criminally incapable of identifying a single men's rights activist or issue other than perhaps Paul Elam. He's the only men's rights activist I've ever seen appropriately identified as such, because he wrote this one satirical article saying we should have like a beat your wife or beat a woman day, which was an obvious satire of a Jezebel article about how it's funny that when women beat the crap out of men. So I'm just making this video to quickly describe what the men's rights movement actually is. I would encourage you, if you see media about the men's rights movement, to actually look up whether the person is a men's rights activist or any related thereto, because I've literally almost never seen the media actually correctly identify a men's rights activist. Elliot Rogers was not a men's rights activist. In fact, if you look at the YouTube guy, Bane66AU, he started an entire web series devoted to debunking that claim, which is now 46 parts long, and each one is about an hour long. He moved off of that topic, which still comes up. So there's about 46 hours of him just describing articles that lie about the men's rights movement, basically, which 95% of them basically just take somebody who isn't a men's rights activist, say, "There's a men's rights activist," and then proceed to basically say, "Men's rights activists are all just neckbeards with fedoras." So yeah, if you want to find a real men's rights activist, I don't know, look at Bane66AU, look at his channel, look at the Honey Badgers, look at Karen Strong, she's the most popular men's rights activist on YouTube. Look at A Voice for Men, in spite of Paul Elam's rather inflammatory one article, most of their content is, pretty readable and logical. Anyways, let's just get to, this is what men's rights activists typically talk about. I'm not a men's rights activist because I don't actually advocate for men's rights particularly. I have bigger fish to fry, so to speak, although sometimes I wonder if maybe I should get on the bandwagon. I don't really like labels in general. I don't like being associated with like Paul Elam's article or whatever. Anyways, first thing that the men's rights movement talks about is, of course, circumcision or male genital mutilation. I would encourage you to stop calling it circumcision. Just call it genital mutilation. That's what it is. This one kind of hits home for me personally because I am circumcised, and as it turns out, the foreskin is actually the most sensitive area of the penis. There's more than 10,000 nerve endings in it. So I will basically never experience sexual pleasure that I could have. This is an example of a right that men in the West do not have, which women do. That is the right to not have their genitals mutilated when they obviously can't choose to do so. In fact, this was popularized in America by Professor or Dr. Kellogg of cornflakes fame, because he found it to be quite effective at getting boys to stop masturbating, which he thought was a big deal, as have many other people in groups throughout time. Of course, it's a religious ritual mostly practiced by Muslims in primarily Muslim countries, except for some reason in America where this has continued to persist, in spite of the fact that no major world health body recommends it. Even the mealy-mouthed American Academy of Pediatrics which I believe is just begrudgingly having to say this, says, like, the benefits outweigh the risks, but not enough to do it universally, basically. But there are other... I mean, let's look at a survey, which I did. The Royal Australian College of Physicians says, after reviewing the currently available evidence, the RSCP believes that the frequency of diseases modified by circumcision, the level of protection offered by circumcision, and the complication rates of circumcision do not warrant routine infant circumcision in Australia and New Zealand. The Canadian Pediatric Society, short and sweet, circumcision of newborns should not be routinely performed. The Royal Dutch Medical Association has maybe the best one. There's no convincing evidence that circumcision is useful or necessary in terms of prevention or hygiene. Circumcision entails the risk of medical and psychological complications. Non-therapeutic circumcision of male minors conflicts with the child's right to autonomy and physical integrity. So, and this is one of those things, like, I always hear, well, but feminists are tackling this too, and they brought it up. I don't care. I'm not talking about feminism right now. I don't want to talk about feminism. Quit trying to talk about feminism whenever men want to talk about something that is related to them. If on any of these issues, if a feminist is also working on it, then good, we're in agreement. I have my doubts as to how effective they've been, if that's true, but fine. If you're Christina Hoff Summers, no problem. I don't care. I don't want to talk about feminism. And finally, you should watch a video of a circumcision. It's fucking brutal. It's disgusting. And if you think that kind of trauma right out of your mom's vag has no effect on a child, man, it's just fucked up. Please don't circumcise your children. Look into the evidence. There's no good evidence that circumcision is necessary, and there's good moral evidence that it's bullshit. So, next I want to talk about domestic violence. This is an issue where kind of a long-standing feminist doctrine where women are always the victim, men are always the perpetrators, has really greatly harmed a lot of people. But I'm not going to talk about feminism. First issue is that just nobody recognizes the real numbers. The Center for Disease Control and the U.S. Department of Justice... according to the National Intimate Partner and Sexual Violence Survey, the NISV, which is December in 2011... within the last 12 months who had experienced domestic violence, men 5,365,000, and women 4,741,000 were victims of intimate partner violence. The numbers are like kind of all over the place in different surveys, but by the way, sources are all below, many sources, but the typical numbers are men are about 40% of the victims. Women are generally more likely to use weapons, probably because men are stronger. In cases where somebody's hospitalized, I think men are actually the greater demographic there. Again, I'm not saying that domestic violence against women isn't a problem, or perhaps even a bigger problem. I'm just saying, like, you'd be surprised that men are actually a significant, very significant minority, if not about even. On a personal note, I experienced some domestic violence directed toward me last year, which was very painful and difficult to deal with. At my last job, I had a coworker whose wife actually would get wasted and kind of physically abuse him, and it's tough to talk about. Men just are not really likely to come out with their feelings about that because they're afraid, of course, of being laughed at for being attacked by women. So, as you can imagine. The other issue is, of course, because there's no recognition that men are often the victim, there are no shelters, basically, for men in a lot of the West. In the U.S., there are approximately 1,500 shelters for women, and here, I'll make a graph that can show you the men and women. The scale is 0 to 1,500, and here's the women's line. That's the whole graph, because there are no men. Male shelters, I mean. There was one called Valley Oasis, but when I looked up their website, they've closed. Or at least their website is no longer operational. There's also the case in Canada. There was a guy, Earl Silverman, who he had the only men's shelter, and he was trying to get funding from the Canadian government, which funds most of these shelters in the West, and they just absolutely would not do it. Women's groups generally just tried to block him from getting any of the money out of the feeding trough of government funds, eventually actually causing or helping push Mr. Silverman to commit suicide. Pretty sad story. Erin Pizzey, of course, had created the first domestic violence shelter ever in the UK, and she, because she said that it was basically a mutual thing, most of the violence is mutual and men are often the victims, feminists basically threatened her, killed her dog, and drove her out of the country, and have ever since then tried to silence her for saying that men can be victims. So that's the domestic violence thing. And of course, like, look into this stuff more. Most of my sources are pretty legit, like government studies and stuff like that, I think you'll find, but do the research yourself. I was initially just gonna do this off the cuff, and then I was like, damn it, nobody's even gonna believe me unless I have like this laundry list of sources and facts, so sorry this is longer than I actually initially had planned, but otherwise you wouldn't believe me. Another issue is suicide for men, which is now the number 2 cause of death for men between, I think it's like 15 and 35 in the US. And at some point, I think it's even number 1 in the UK for certain age demographics. Men commit suicide 3 times more than women. 77 in the US, 77.4% of suicides are men to 22.6% female. Again, I'm not saying suicides for females is good. Of course, it's all bad, but men's rights activists or advocates are like, why is this number so high? The rate is 20.7 per 100,000 in the U.S. It's a lot. And if you do the numbers, that's about 30,000 people, 30,000 men killed themselves in 2013 in the U.S. That's sad. On a personal note, also, I was very nearly one of those people. When I was about 20, I tried to kill myself. Thankfully, I got through it, and I'm still here, but yeah, it's a real problem. Of course, you probably heard about family court bias. I was a victim of this when I was younger. My father was not able to get custody of me. It was kind of split, but I went with my mom, and suffice it to say that my dad is a substantially more well-equipped, or at least at that time was a better-equipped parent. My mom didn't have such a great bedside manner, and that's about the only place I ever saw her, so there you go. This is kind of all anecdotal. It's mainly, I think, bias in judges and others seeing women as the primary caregiver and thus giving custody to women. There's a lot of issues about the family courts, like, I guess, in child support, if a man remarries, then the woman's income, his new wife's income, will be included in the child support calculations, but if a woman who has the kids gets another man, then it doesn't have any effect on child support. It's tough to get accurate statistics about this, so I don't want to talk too much about it, but I think we all know that family courts are a bit biased in favor of mothers, at least in regards to getting the children and stuff like that. Aside from many other laws, which I kind of disagree with regards to alimony and all that, but I'm not going to get into it. Look into it yourself. This is a super shocking thing, male rape. Not rape by males, although men do get raped more if you calculate prison rape, but who cares, they're just criminals, right? Fuck you if you think that. The CDC National Intimate Partner and Sexual Violence Survey in 2010, males who reported being forced to penetrate is about 1.3 million. Women who reported that they were raped was about 1.3 million. What? Yeah, as it turns out, men are in fact raped a lot, and by women. And men, of course. Probably more men is my guess. But why haven't you ever heard about this? The other issue that I can think of right off the top of my head is, what about all the boys who get molested by older women? Like, people just kind of like laugh about it. There's a whole South Park episode where it's about like the little kid who gets statutorily raped by his older, obviously, teacher, and everybody, when Kyle tells, like, my younger brother is like 8 and like his teacher is having sex with him, and everybody's just like, nice.
Nice. Nice. Nice. Nice. Nice. Nice. Nice. Nice.
And that seems to be just kind of the attitude in general. And like a lot of these women never really see a lot of punishment. And in fact, I saw one case where a woman statutorily raped a boy and then he had to pay child support to his rapist. It's pretty weird. If you want to talk about like rape victims that are totally ignored, like a rape culture or something, like I would say it's basically men who are ignored on this issue, and especially younger men who are the victim of sexual assault from older women. And anecdotally, I've been kind of not forced, but coerced kind of into having sex that I really didn't want to, and, you know, I'm not going to say I was raped, but, I mean, who am I going to talk to about it, and who would give a fuck, you know? It's not pleasant. We also have the sentencing gap in the United States, whereby a Michigan law professor found in a study that for the exact same crime and related circumstances, women were sentenced to, well, men's sentences are 60% longer than a woman's for the exact same crime, exact same kind of circumstances. By contrast, the difference between a black man and a white man is only 20%. So the difference in sentencing in our justice system between a woman and a man is 3 times greater than that between the races, black and white, which might surprise you. Probably contributing to the fact that 90% of the people in American rape cages are male. So, pretty horrible. I don't want women's sentences to go up necessarily, but it should be investigated why men are treated so incredibly unfairly compared to women for doing the exact same kind of crime. Alright, next we have homelessness. About 75% of the chronically homeless in the US are men, as I'm sure you have witnessed if you have been in a city before. And if you look generally at the services provided for the homeless, in spite of the fact that most homeless people are men, women will just instantly get help. There are many shelters where if a woman says, you know, I need help, she'll just instantly get service. If a man goes there, it's just like, see you later. Go somewhere else. Not saying that's always the case, but why are so many men homeless? I said I don't want to really talk about feminism, but there's kind of a thing where, like, feminists always look at the top, and yeah, like, people at the top of society tend to be men on average, but also people on the bottom are also men, predominantly. So, hashtag male privilege, white male privilege. Check out some homeless men. They are a part of a system which is designed to advantage them, but has horribly failed the vast majority of homeless men. Anyways, male workplace deaths. In the UK, 97% of workplace deaths are men, and in the US, it's 93%. About. Why is that? Well, men generally choose to do the more dangerous jobs. Women choose not to do those jobs. That's not a problem, in my opinion, but it would be nice to get, you know, less workplace deaths in general, of course, and it's worth noting that this is probably responsible for a lot of what the so-called wage gap reflects, which is if you do jobs where you're significantly likely to die, yeah, you get paid more. If women want to get paid more to do those jobs, they're perfectly able to choose to do those jobs. They just don't. Anyways, another issue that I've seen a lot in my lifetime is the assumption that men are all rapists, and especially like child rapists. It's really fucking bigoted, you know? Like, I actually see, like, in my job here in Japan, I deal with children a lot. Pretty much all day is my job dealing with children, and they're great. I love children. Like, I never thought I would have, actually, before I came here. I kind of hated them, but now that I work with kids, it's great. But here, like, I have my own kindergarten class, and like I'm not supervised at all. It's just me and like the kids, and it's fun. You know, I run around with them. I pick them up and spin them around, and yeah, it's a blast. But in America, I know that there's this. I don't think I would even be allowed to do that. Like, actually, my coworker who used to work at a kindergarten kind of daycare thing says the men are like not even allowed to like touch the children or like pick them up. That would be totally, as they say here, dame, totally impermissible. Here, it's like, nobody cares. There isn't that assumption that men are all fucking pig rapists, or specifically child rapists, for which I'm actually grateful. There's also, like, I don't know if this is still the case, but there's an airline where men weren't allowed to sit next to unaccompanied minors on an airplane. Like, does that seem maybe a little bit insulting toward all men? Teach men not to rape. Like, I'm pretty sure nobody who is inclined toward rape has ever had their mind changed by somebody being like, did you know rape is bad? Yeah, I'm pretty sure 99.9% of men are aware of this. Actually, probably 100% are aware of it. There's just 0.01% that don't care because they're psychopaths. Anyways, selective service. Why don't women have to sign up for the draft? I would rather there just be no drafts, personally, but and initially, actually, men's right to vote was contingent on the fact that they had to do selective service. That was what the court ruled because, like, the constitutionality of the draft was challenged, and so the Supreme Court said, well, men can vote because they have to serve in the military if asked, whereas women don't. And then women were like, well, but we want to vote too, and so men were like, yeah, okay. But by the by, most men weren't allowed to vote for most of history. That's kind of a misnomer that's been spread around, like men have just been oppressing women out of the vote the whole time. No, it's mostly been property owners. Anyways, one thing I've just been kind of curious about, why are there not more effective male contraceptives? I heard there's a surgery you can get over in Asia, like they inject something into your dick and like you can't impregnate a girl and you can get it removed pretty easily. It's kind of cheap, but not available in the West. Why isn't there more research and development into male contraception? You know, like, I read something that there's some resistance to that from women's groups. I'm not sure if that's true. I didn't research it, so it's just hearsay. But it would be great if men could have a better ability to control their own reproductive issues in that regard. On that note, another right that women have that men do not have in the U.S., certainly in the UK, I believe, is like baby Moses laws, where they can forfeit their baby at like a fire house or whatever, a fire station. Say, I don't want to be a parent. Women can get an abortion. Men are not allowed to say, I don't want to have this child and I don't want to be responsible for it. So, in a way, I think if women want to be able to have abortions, men should be able to disavow their claim on the child and therefore not have to pay all the child support and stuff like that. Issue for another day. I don't know. But, by the way, name a single right that that men have that women don't have in the West. You can't find one. I guarantee it. Male-specific disease research is significantly underfunded compared to women's. I just took one example. Breast cancer gets at least $600 or $700 million a year. It's actually probably more than $1 billion. Prostate cancer, about $250 million. So, well under half, or maybe even a third. My grandpa died of prostate cancer. I already had testicular cancer. Male-specific diseases in general, just compared to women, female-specific diseases, nobody really cares. So yeah, that's just the brief. Those are issues that men's rights activists, advocates, of whom I'm aware, tend to talk about. If you see something else, it's almost undoubtedly going to be a pickup artist being called a men's rights advocate. So before you jump to the conclusion that whoever you're hearing about is a men's rights activist or a part of the men's rights movement, check and see if that's actually true. Do they identify themselves as men's rights advocates? Or do they, like Roosh V, openly say, and absolutely, unequivocally say, no, I am not a men's rights activist? If they say that, if you see an article about something from Return of Kings, it's not a men's rights advocate, it's a pickup artist. They are not the same. Some of their views may, in some cases, happen to overlap. That's more so, I think, with MGTOWs, who are men going their own way. They're people who are no longer interested in marriage for probably some of the reasons that I already illuminated. But yeah, make sure that you know that who you're talking about, in fact, is a men's rights advocate. Like the Honey Badgers, like Karen Strong, like Bane66AU, like people at A Voice for Men, like, what's his name? The popular one who even feminists kind of like, I can't remember his name. Anyways, they exist. They're not that crazy. I don't consider myself to be a men's rights advocate. I don't have the time. But maybe I should be, since a lot of this stuff has directly affected me, you know? So yeah, I just wanted to make a video so that you know this is what a men's rights advocate is. The media, which is largely leftist and feminist, absolutely hates the men's rights movement and will do absolutely anything to, well, libel them. Slander is spoken, libel is written. And it's just not true. So, if you hate pickup artists, fine. You know, I don't care. I don't really care if you hate men's rights advocates, but at least make sure that it is a men's rights advocate. I don't want to editorialize too much, but why is it that there are all these issues you've never heard of? I think it's basically just people don't really care about the suffering or pain of men that much. Because probably men are reproductively less valuable, and so society grew up really having to care about the safety and security of women, otherwise you're dead. Women have a very limited number of eggs and can take a long time to reproduce. A single man can impregnate lots of women, so if you're low on men, it's not really a big deal. If you're low on women, you're fucked. So that's probably one of the reasons. And because of that, you know, men are less likely to talk about their pain or their suffering. They're very likely to focus on the pain and suffering of women. I know that this is the case also for myself. It's very difficult to see any kind of injustice against men. And in fact, I can see in my own teaching job how inclined I am to try to coddle women and not allow girls to lose, that kind of thing. It's a very common and kind of pre-programmed instinct in humans, I think, to focus on women and women's issues and not really give a damn about disposable men. I'll hopefully have a more amusing video soon. So have a nice day.